Okay, thank you. So this is the Zoom Device Management Training, or ZDM training. I'm the project manager for ZDM, and I'll be the only session speaker for today, so you're stuck with me. I'm a part of the hardware partnerships team, but as I mentioned, I am the project manager for ZDM, so should be able to help answer any questions at the end of the session. Okay, so for a quick overview, Zoom Device Management, or ZDM, is a tool to help you remotely manage your Zoom Rooms devices from one centralized location. And before I get into that one location we're talking about, can I get a show of hands of how many people are managing Zoom Rooms for their company today? Okay, we'll keep hands up. How many of you are also IT admin? Okay, seems like the same group of hands. Okay, this helps for the presentation. So by one centralized location, we mean the Zoom web portal, right? So the same web portal you're familiar with if you're managing Zoom Rooms, you'll be able to manage your Zoom Rooms devices on another level from the same web portal. So if you've been managing Zoom Rooms, you'll know it can be a very manual and tedious process to do things like upgrade your device, whether it be the iOS, the Mac OS, or just the Zoom Rooms application, maybe for the controller, right? It's a manual process to rename the device. To do anything with the device, it can be a very manual and tedious process today. Or maybe you enrolled the Zoom Rooms device to an MDM, right? Maybe your company's already been using an MDM and you just moved your Zoom Rooms devices there. And that works for the most part, but there's a couple of things. One, there's an additional cost to that, right? It's not free to do that. And two, it's another layer to manage. It's in another cloud, another tab, another app. It's not in Zoom's ecosystem. So ZDM, Zoom Device Management, is a tool that lives within our ecosystem and allows for you to do similar things as the other MDM tools. I do want to add that ZDM has a Zoom Rooms focus, right? So we'll try not to compare it directly with mobile device management. It is the technology we're leveraging, but it's not meant to do exactly the same things, right? We're trying to simplify that experience and give you a set of tools at launch so you guys don't have to configure anything, just enroll in ZDM. Okay, so we support Apple and Windows devices today. So our iPads, our Macs, and our Windows machines. And once you're enrolled, you'll be able to do things like automatically assign that device to a Zoom room. So no more activation codes or sign-in email addresses, no pairing codes, just assign that device to a room from the web. Okay, so there's a three-step process essentially, or two-step process for Windows. There's a pre-enrollment with Apple, so you'll have to upload some certificates, maybe a server token, and then enrollment. We support individual enrollment as well as batch enrollment with Apple Business Manager. We'll get into that later. And then once I'm enrolled, I'm ready to start using ZDM. I'm in the Zoom web portal. You'll see later there's a new tab, Zoom Device Management, and this is where I can configure some of those ZDM features. Okay, a little more into Apple. I mentioned there's a pre-enrollment process. This is step one. I'll have to upload an MDM push certificate. This MDM push certificate is establishing trust between Zoom servers and Apple servers. It allows for us to send Apple push notifications via MDM and essentially tell the device what to do, right? So you'll need to upload that MDM push certificate in both cases, whether you're enrolling individually or whether you're using Apple Business Manager. If you're using Apple Business Manager, you'll also need to upload that MDM server token, okay? And we'll get more into that later. So once I've taken care of the pre-enrollment process, I'll choose an enrollment option. And we strongly recommend using Apple Business Manager to enroll your devices, as at the same time it takes to enroll one device, you can enroll hundreds of devices with Apple Business Manager. So we're strongly recommending using Apple's device enrollment program and managing through the Business Manager portal. Okay, and then we're ready to start using it. We'll get into the feature set in a couple of slides here. ZDM for Windows is a lot simpler. I'll go to the new Device Management tab. You'll see it in a second if you haven't seen it yet. But I'll click on a link. I'll enter an access code that we've provided, and that's it. I'm enrolled. Right? So really simple for Windows. It takes a minute to enroll, and I can start using ZDM within a few minutes. Here's a full feature overview of ZDM today. So we talked about auto assignment, right? We'll also auto install the Zoom Rooms application, automatically launch the Zoom Room application, and if I've assigned it in web before it launches, then the first screen I'll see is the Zoom Room already logged in, right? So I can configure this in web so the first time Zoom Room launches, I can start a meeting. No activation codes, no pairing codes, no email addresses. Right? When the time comes, I can upgrade from web, whether that be the iOS, the Mac OS, or just the Zoom Rooms application. I can upgrade all from web, and you'll see what that UI looks like later on. Okay, so what about locking down that iPad, right? Making sure users can't access the home screen. That's where autonomous single app mode will come into play, right? And many of you may be familiar with single app mode or guided access mode, but autonomous single app mode will essentially lock down the iPad to one app, but in case of a network failure, you can exit the app. The ASAM profile lives on a room level, so if I'm not signed into a room, I'm not locked down, right? So we're only locking you down to the Zoom Rooms application once you're signed into a room. Further, I'll be able to rename my Apple devices and Windows patch management. So we talked about upgrade. I'll also be able to manage my Windows system patches from the same Zoom web portal. So it's all within the Zoom ecosystem. Keep your devices up to date. Okay, so go ahead and get started. Once I have the ZDM privileges, my account is configured, I'll see this new device management tab under Zoom Rooms. You'll see a quick overview of what ZDM is capable of, what it supports. Once I'm ready and feel comfortable with starting, I'll click on the blue button here. And we've divided it into two sections here now. So I have a device overview section and an enrollment section. In the device overview, I can see how many devices I've enrolled in ZDM, and I can click on any one of these view links to jump to the Zoom Rooms devices page. And we'll automatically filter, depending on which view you've selected. We'll filter iPads, Macs, or Windows. In the enrollment section, you guessed it, we'll be enrolling devices, right? So here you see with Apple, I can get started by uploading a certificate. For Windows, you'll see the blue text on the screen. There's a couple of texts, right? Windows Updates Management. I have no data right now, right? Because I haven't enrolled any devices. Once I enroll a device, you'll see later, we'll scan the device, and if there are any patches that are relevant to that machine, then we'll display them here, and you can assign or ignore that patch. Okay, and we'll see that more later. So when will that patch be installed on that Windows machine? This is where the update schedule will come into play. So I can select one day of the week, or I can select every day of the week if that's what I prefer. I'll set my active hours, and that's when my device will not upgrade, right? So this active hours is meant to protect you from upgrades happening while you're active, right? So there's also an auto restart deadline period with a minimum of 2 days. Okay, so once I'm ready, I feel comfortable with ZDM, I'm ready to get started, what do I do, right? So if I'm covering the full suite of devices, maybe I'll start with Apple. Since there's a pre-enrollment process, I want to just get it out of the way, right? So I'll need to upload an MDM push certificate and maybe an MDM server token if I want to manage in batches. To do this, I will click Upload Certificate, and I have a 3-step process here. The first step is to download a CSR from Zoom, otherwise known as a Certificate Signing Request. So this CSR is used to request trust from Apple, right? Allow us to communicate with Apple devices from the cloud. All right, so I'll download the CSR now, and the next step is to sign in to Apple's Push Certificates portal. I'll do that now. Agree to the terms and conditions, and here is where I'll upload that CSR that I just downloaded from Zoom. Click Upload, and the MDM push certificate will automatically be generated by Apple. So now I'll download that push certificate and come back to Zoom and upload it here in step 3. Once that's done, you'll get a banner from the top of the screen letting you know the certificate's been uploaded, and you can also see at the bottom of the screen you have a year from the time you upload to enroll devices. So now I'm ready to enroll devices individually. There's another step for enrolling devices with Apple Business Manager. Okay, so I'll click into Apple Business Manager. It's a very similar process to uploading a certificate, right? So I'll download a public key this time instead of a CSR, log into a different portal. This is Apple Business Manager portal. Once I'm here, I'll navigate to settings, and I'm gonna need to create my MDM server first. That's what I'm doing here. Go to Device Management Settings, and now we'll see the button for adding an MDM server. I'll give it a name. Here's where I upload the public key. select Save, and now I have the option to download a server token. So I'll do that now. Select Yes, and I'm back to Zoom, right? Similar process, upload it here, and now my token's been added, my certificate's been added, pre-enrollment is done for Apple. Okay, so now enrolling with Apple. Since we're talking about Apple, we'll stick with Apple. You'll see later Windows really only takes a minute. So most of the heavy lifting here is done on the Apple side if you are enrolling individually. Okay, so the first step for enrolling iPads individually is to set your device into supervised mode. Now, supervision allows for you to do more on the device management side, right, on the supervised side. So you'll definitely want to make sure you set your device into supervised mode. And to do this, we have a help article, but for the purposes of this training, I'll show you what that looks like. We'll be leveraging an app you can download directly from the Apple Store. It's Apple's app. It's Apple Configurator 2. Some of you will be familiar with this. You'll know you can add to the device enrollment program from Apple Configurator 2. You can assign it to a server from Apple Configurator 2. Right now, today, we're going to be setting the device into supervised mode. Right? This is a prerequisite to enrolling. So I'm preparing with manual configuration. I'll skip the DEP and make sure I select supervised devices. I'm not enrolling in an MDM, so I'll skip this part here. And then organization name. This last step here before I prepare is what I want to see during that setup wizard, right? Language, region, network, what steps do I want to see when that device powers on? Okay, once I'm ready, I'll click prepare. The device will go through a couple steps, but ultimately it will restart, reboot, and you'll see that setup wizard, right? We've seen it if we've gotten a new iPhone or Mac, right? There's a setup wizard process where you need to enter language, region, stuff like that. Once it gets to the home screen, I'll click on settings, and here's where I can verify that my device is in supervised mode. We have a nice message above our name that indicates this. Okay, so now pre-enrollment is officially done, right? This extra step is only for iPads and only for individual enrollment. I want to take this time to emphasize use Apple Business Manager if you can, right? If your company uses Apple DEP, then you'll have a much more frictionless experience by using Apple Business Manager, and you'll save yourself a lot of time. Okay, so in the second step, I have two options for enrolling individually. I can scan a QR code and enter an access code. Guess which one I'm going to do? So I'll scan a QR code, right? Open my camera app on the iPad, scan a QR code. It's my personal preference. It's the more magical experience, right? So I'll click on the link at the top of the screen, select Allow, and here I have the MDM profile inside of my iPad settings. I will need to come into my iPad settings and install it, so I'll do that now. Last step is to trust, and now the configuration profile has been installed on my iPad. What will happen now is the Zoom Rooms application will begin downloading, and once downloaded, it will auto-launch. Now, I may not see this screen, right? If I've assigned this device to a room, then it'll just be the ZRC home screen, right? We don't need to, we'll see later in the live demo aspect of this, I can bypass this screen. Okay, the enrolled count hasn't increased, and now we'll transition into individual enrollment for Mac. Okay, so in this case, I will have to use the access code, unfortunately, but it's very easy. So all I have to do is click the link on the screen. That access code is dynamic, so I believe it changes every day. I'll click on the screen, I get this nice pop-up, enter the access code provided by Zoom. The mobile configuration profile is downloaded. I'll get this pop-up on my Mac, letting me know if I'm sure I want to install Zoom Rooms MDM, select install, and now the profile has been installed. Similar process, Zoom Rooms application will download. Once downloaded, it will auto-launch into this screen or into the Zoom Rooms home screen. Okay, so that's individual enrollment. A manual process, but now I'll show you how you can enroll hundreds of devices within the same time. So this is the Apple Business Manager portal, and I have 3 options for assigning devices. In this case, I'm using a serial number because I had one test device, but you're much more likely to use an order number or upload a CSV or at least use multiple serial numbers, right? Leverage Apple Business Manager and being able to enroll in batches. So here I enter a serial number. In step 2, I assign to the server of my choice. This is the server I created earlier. I get a message that says my device has been assigned. Now, let's say I have a new iPad. I've never turned it on before. When I go through that setup wizard process, language, region, there will be a new remote configuration screen. And here I'll select next, and that's when the configuration profile will be installed. But what if I have an existing iPad and I still want to use Apple Business Manager? Well, that's okay. Once you get this message, the next step will be to go on the iPad device and factory reset it, right? So we just need to force it to go through that setup wizard process and see that remote configuration screen to install the profile. Okay, so I'll do that now. My iPad is rebooting. It's saying hi to me. And here's that screen we're talking about. Okay, so I'll select next, and same process for individual enrollment. We'll automatically download the Zoom Rooms app. Once installed, auto launch. Okay, so that takes care of Apple. Now let's get started with Windows. As I mentioned, a much more simple process, similar to individual enrollment for Mac, right? So I'm going over to the Windows section and clicking on a link, entering an access code. My profile will be installed. This information here is pre-populated, so all I have to do is click next, and there you have it. We get a message that says your device will be set up, but if you don't want to wait, you can go over to your Windows settings just to verify, or maybe you can sync it. This will speed up the process of syncing with the device. So you'll go to Access Worker School, identify the MDM profile here, and here's also where you can disconnect or remove the MDM from the device. Okay, the Zoom Rooms application will automatically be downloaded, launched, and I see this pairing screen again. Okay, right before I jump in there, so if I click one of these views here next to my enrolled count, I'll jump to the Zoom Rooms devices page. And in this case, I have all devices filtered, but if I selected one of those view links, we'll automatically filter for what device you've selected, right? So here you'll see that I can filter for devices only enrolled in ZDM. So maybe I want to do this to start assigning devices all at the same time. Maybe I want to rename all my Zoom device management devices. Whatever the case may be, we have a filter for you available now that makes it easy to access your ZDM devices. Okay, so now we're enrolled, right? We can get started with ZDM. And for this portion, we have plenty of time to get into a live demo. So here's a reminder of the features that are available today. For this live demo aspect, we will have already auto-installed. We have already enrolled. We auto-installed and we'll auto-launch. So we'll see that pairing code screen that I've shown you probably a few times by now, right? Can we switch to the multi-view, please, in the back? Awesome, so there's the pair with the controller screen, right? This is my Mac Mini, essentially. This can be in the back of the room, like it is in this case, or it can be across the country. It doesn't matter, right? I can control it from the web, and that's what I'll do now. So this is my Zoom account, right? I'll refresh to make sure I am still signed in. And here, I will start by creating a room. So if you guys are managing Zoom Rooms, you're familiar with this step, right? Okay, let's call this one ZDM Zoomtopia. Skip calendar configuration for now, but strongly recommend you build rooms with calendar integration. Okay, so now that Zoom room is created, right? Maybe I do this 10 times, 100 times, or just, in this case, once. I'll come into the edit page of the Zoom rooms. There's a new device management section. Oh, it's a little blurry for you there on the screen, but it's the same UI. There's a new device management section at the bottom here. I can scroll down, or I can use this to jump there. Right, so hopefully you can see this well. But within here, the first section, or the first feature under device management is autonomous single app mode. So as I mentioned, this could live at the room level, But if I have my account settings set to always have ASAM enabled, then this would have already been enabled and I don't even need to do this step, right? In this case, I'll enable it for the room. So now when my Zoom Rooms controller launches the application, it'll be locked down and I can't exit the application. Okay, so now I'm assigning a device. You can't see that clearly, but I have an enrolled iPad and enrolled Mac Mini here. So before I assign it, I can select from the drop-down list a device that I've enrolled. So here I have around 10 devices or so that I've pre-enrolled already. Or if I haven't enrolled it yet, I can enter in the serial number. If I wanted to get ahead, right, maybe I'm not enrolling today, but I want to get my Zoom Rooms configured, all set up, then when I enroll, this assignment will still take place. Okay, so for this, I'll be selecting a device from the drop-down menu. This is my enrolled Mac Mini, and I will save. And here you will see on the second screen, the Mac Mini should assign to the room. I'm not sure what the case is with the network, or it just takes a second, but it will assign to the room. Usually faster from my experience, that's why I was a little nervous there, but it will assign to the room, right? And now I can do the same thing for a Zoom Rooms controller. So I'm on the pairing code screen here, and just as you expect, I'm assigning the device now, and I'm right-handed, so bear with me. I'll save, and here you will see this is a network issue, I believe, right? So you saw the assignment go through, right? And it'll be assigned to the same room. I can start a meeting. Assuming all my peripherals have been set up, that's it, right? I'm assigned to the room, I'm logged in, I can get my meeting started. Simple as that. So that covers Apple. That covers a few of the features we offer. I'd like to highlight a couple of other ones. So we talked about upgrade. This can be done from a room level. So here, or a floor level rather. I'm on the 11th floor here. I can use these upgrade buttons at the top of the screen, or I can select an individual upgrade button for the device, or I can do it for the account. Maybe I want to upgrade all of them at the same time. So here's where your upgrade option will live. It will be in the devices page of Zoom Room. I can also, why don't we go back into the room I created, and here you'll see I have my enrolled iPad and enrolled Mac Mini. I wish that text was more clear. Actually, can we jump back to maybe just single screen? Awesome. Thank you. So now I can see my enrolled iPad and enrolled Mac Mini are on the screen. Here's where I'll also rename that device. So maybe I want it to match my room name, right? This is the ZRC, and I would do the same thing for the Mac. So now on a management or organized level, I can rename my devices from web to match my Zoom room, and maybe it makes a lot more sense that way. Okay, so we've covered autonomous single app mode. We've covered automatic launching, installing, and assigning. Covered upgrades, rename, and now I think the only thing left is Windows, right? We didn't forget about Windows. We'll cover that now. So I mentioned I had no data, or you guys saw that I had no data because I had no enrolled devices. Now that I come into my Windows Updates Management section, I see there are patches available, right? So here's what's going to happen at time of enrollment. I'm enrolling a Windows device, right? You saw what that process looks like. What happens at time of enrollment is we're going to scan that device for any available patches. Any patches that are relevant for that machine, we will automatically install at time of enrollment. So it's safe to assume that your Windows ZDM device at time of enrollment is up to date with the latest patches at time of enrollment. From this point on, we will not automatically install any patches for your machine, but they will be displayed in your portal as unassigned. Right? You can see the classification, so maybe you only want to assign security patches. I can do that here from the More menu. I can select to assign devices, and then I have a checkbox here for all enrolled devices, right? Maybe I don't want to get into the hierarchy, or maybe I do. I can do it for a specific room, I can do it for a specific floor, or otherwise we follow the same location hierarchy we have today for Zoom Rooms. you'll be able to assign patches on that same level. Okay, so we are ahead of time, but I would like to open the floor up to questions now. Thank you. Are we having, yeah, I think in the front, okay, yeah.
When can we see this?
Good question. Okay, good question. So we are in production today. Yeah, so it lives behind an option. You'll have to contact your support rep or find my email address and I can help you out. But it is available today in production with all of the features that I mentioned here today. So you'll just need to ask for ZDM to be enabled for your account. It will be opened up sometime later this month for everybody, so that step won't be needed. Please?
So I have a two-part question. The first part is, so Crestron just came out with a new Flex wall mount system, or UC system, and I believe the base is Windows IoT.
Mm-hmm.
Can I manage that type of system with this device management feature?
Mm-hmm. Right, so fair question, right? For those of you in the back that couldn't hear, the new Crestron Flex, he wants to be able to manage Crestron devices essentially from this same portal, right? Does ZDM support Crestron devices? And the short answer to that today is no, but maybe Chris can elaborate on that. Okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay.
It sounds like that might be on the roadmap, though, right? You were saying eventually all the devices in the room are going to be managed through here, hopefully.
Right.
Sorry, what devices?
Sorry?
What about like the Dell IoT?
Yeah, so good question. So what about the IoT devices, right? We talked about Windows machines, but what about the IoT devices? Exactly the same. So this Windows demonstration covers IoT.
Before we go, the second part is, this might be able to be answered quickly, but the second part is, since Apple Business Manager is in the picture, this doesn't require an MDM like Jam, for instance, right?
Right. Right. So with Apple Business Manager in the picture, does this require an MDM like Jam for one of those other MDM tools? And no, it doesn't. And there's a couple different reasons, right? You are enrolling into an MDM when you're doing this. And I believe you can only be enrolled into one MDM at a time. Right. So that answers your question.
So for the Windows IoT devices, they will definitely be supported with ZDM. There's a little bit of a difference on Windows 1607 that I think the enroll process maybe has an additional step. That's the only difference. And if it's a Windows IoT that's on LTSC, the long-term service branch, it won't take upgrades, but it'll still take the security patches. So the patches that you see here will apply to IoT as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So this will apply for Windows devices as well. So Windows patches is supported for Windows and Windows IoT, and they'll behave the same way. Chris mentioned that there is a slightly different process for enrolling version 1607, Windows 10 version 1607 IoT devices, but that'll be there for you in the UI, and it's just entering in maybe one more field. It's not different, it's just one more step.
And there's really not that many devices out there that would be using 1607. It's quite an old version, but that's the only slight difference.
So, based on that, what's the roadmap to support management for Crestron system-based devices?
Mm-hmm.
So for the Crestron Flex UC engine, the compute with IoT will be fully supported by this. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I think we had a question here at the front.
Yeah. Is it currently available on the roadmap to be able to batch create user and assign devices? So if I have a spreadsheet that says like this is the root name, this is the calendar, this is the max serial, go upload, so I don't have to go through and create 50 rooms, assign 150 devices.
Mm-hmm.
Have, control and schedule it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that available on the roadmap?
So for those of you, I'll answer your question in a second. For those of you who couldn't hear, is batch creating Zoom rooms on the roadmap, right? So if I have a spreadsheet with a Zoom Rooms controller, scheduling display, essentially all my Zoom Rooms devices in a spreadsheet, can I create rooms in batches and not go through this UI? I don't believe that's on the roadmap today. It makes a lot of sense, so maybe it will be in the future. I'm not sure if Chris has anything to add to that, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
It's definitely on the roadmap. I don't know if we have an ETA.
Fair question. So before I get to another question, are we handing out mics for those of you in the back? Or I do see there's a mic available here. I don't want to just get questions from the front. I do see some hands in the back there. So maybe you guys can use the mic right there. And I'll get to your question in a second.
You have a question?
Thank you. So we currently use Jamf to enroll all of our Zoom rooms and our Mac Minis for Zoom rooms, and it will like create the user account and bypass all the out-of-box stuff. Does ZDM currently do that, or are we still going to have some hands-on time with the machines?
Sorry,
If they're
can you
going
repeat
through,
your-
like if a machine's going through DEP, right? Or do we still have to have, as an IT administrator, do we still need to have hands-on time with the machine to create accounts, like an account for the application to run in, turn off sleep and all that, or will that be done through ZDM?
So I think I understand your question, and I'll try and answer it with a story, right? So I've built 100 Zoom rooms, and now I've just purchased 100 Zoom rooms devices, right? Let's, in this case, say 100 controllers and 100 Mac Minis. I can enroll all of those at once, right? And then I don't necessarily need to be that person that takes the device through the setup wizard, but when you turn on the device, it'll have to go through the setup wizard, right? That's when it'll install the profile. So somebody will need to be hands-on entering in language and region and stuff like that before you're at the Zoom Rooms screen. But assuming you have somebody to press some buttons on the device, then you will be able to do everything else from web.
Okay, so like creating like admin user accounts on that, you still have to go through and do that, because you can, once you've done like accepted language and I'm gonna go under enrollment, you can skip everything else and get it to like launch Zoom. Is that on the roadmap, or is that part of what ZDM can do, or we're still
That
doing
is what
by hand?
ZDM does today.
Okay, so it creates user
If I'm
accounts as well.
understanding your question correctly,
I
what are you creating user accounts for?
like an account on a computer to run a software application.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, local user account.
Local.
Thank you.
No, that's not available today.
Okay.
And we have heard this come up before from yourself and others, and I do believe it may be added to the roadmap.
Cool. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for your question. Yes, please.
Just expanding on what this can do. So obviously you're handling the OS on your Macs and your Windows machines. Any plans to add the ability to manage things like Logitech Meetup firmware, Crestron Mercury firmwares, things like that? So again, so I don't have to go put my hands on the devices.
Right. Makes a lot of sense, right? Zoom device management, your camera, speakerphone, microphone does fall under that. I'm not sure where it stands today on the roadmap, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm the project manager for ZDM, so I'll take this back with me and see if we can get it on a roadmap. It is not on the roadmap today, I don't think.
So it is on the roadmap. That's our
His roadmap.
that is definitely our goal. That's one of the reasons we you saw the appliance program being launched this morning. So those devices, when they start shipping, because they're all one device, it's really easy. They will have firmware upgrades from ZDM. So for those devices, that's where we're starting. You can upgrade the firmware, upgrade the Zoom app. If there's new camera firmware or microphone array firmware, you can upgrade all that right through ZDM. The USB peripherals are a little bit more challenging. So we're working with our partners, Logitech being kind of having the largest market share of all the peripherals out there, working very closely with Logitech and our other partners on the best way to implement that. But it's a little bit more work, but that's kind of the next step.
Thank you. So before I get to your question here in the front, How many of you in the audience have a D10? Okay, that's actually maybe about half the audience or so, right? So Chris brings up a good point. With D10 today, with ZDM, you can upgrade the firmware, right? And once you upgrade the firmware further, it will auto-enroll in ZDM. So you don't need to go on a browser and enter an access code with the D10 device today. All you'll do is upgrade the firmware from web with one of those upgrade buttons you saw earlier, and it will automatically enroll in ZDM. This experience, I believe, supports our vision that Chris just mentioned. This seamless experience of me upgrading a firmware and ZDM being automatically installed on the device. This is where we're trying to go. Just wanted to mention that. Do you have a question in the front?
Yeah, so it's two questions actually. So the first one is devices like need quality and all that stuff. I assume that will eventually be
Absolutely. I believe it may already be enrolled by the time it gets to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's whether that comes like in December or January, I'm not 100% confirmed on, but we are working on some auto provisioning capabilities. So similar to the Apple Business Manager, where you can put in an order number, and but the devices have shipped, but they're in flight, they haven't even arrived. You can have them pre-provisioned, plug them in, and fire them up, and they'll be attached either to your account, or if you wanted to tie it to a specific room, you could do that as well. So it depends on how you do deployments. But yeah, we're working on auto provisioning.
in the second phase. So these patches sometimes they don't stay very well. They will be back.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean the patch itself. When you roll it back and you install.
Oh, I see. No, not today. You can ignore the patch. So if the patch isn't relevant to you, you can ignore it. Good question.
So I know you said that you don't have you don't have all the features of a typical MDM. Is there any way right now to deal with devices walking off, or is that planned?
Walking
in terms
off.
of like somebody taking an iPad from a room or removing a Mac Mini from a room, is there any kind of lock or wipe?
Yeah, this is new for
features?
device management. I've heard of it. Is device management, right?
Yeah.
You want to make sure a device is secure.
Right.
I think typically we'll have cases, at least in our offices, that will lock down the controller, and then the Mac Mini is usually behind the TV. So
Sure.
you don't see a lot of it. Somebody would really have to,
Right.
come
it's
directly for it.
Not coming. Do we know? Or
Location, your SOGPS, right? Location.
No, I mean just being able to, like, if it connects to network, be able to wipe it, right, or lock it down so that it can't be. utilized.
Device wiping specifically has come up a few times, and I
Yeah.
do believe that will be added to the roadmap
Okay.
in the future. So we're not trying to be an MDM per se,
Right.
But if we keep on hearing things come up, we are listening, right? And we do feel some of that pain that is around managing your Zoom Rooms devices. So it may not be on the roadmap today, but that's not to say it can't be added on the roadmap in the future. And then we'll get to your question after.
Is there an Apple Business Manager equivalent for Windows coming in the future?
I don't know if there's an equivalent, but I'll tell you what you can do if you're trying to batch enroll your Windows devices. You can include that PPKG file, which we have on one of our support articles, inside of your image, and then push that image to your Windows devices. So you can batch enroll Windows that way, if that's what you were leaning towards. Okay.
A follow on to his question on MDM. Granted, it's not supposed, you're not trying to be a full MDM, but are you going to have it so you can control apps that are on the iPad?
The Zoom Rooms app.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, we're going to be able to take off things like iMessage and FaceTime and all the other.
So
garbage that's on those things.
here's what we think about that is, once you're in the Zoom Rooms application, we can lock you down there, right? So we don't need to worry about messages or essentially what lives behind that app. If we can lock you down there, then we don't need to secure anything behind that, right? If that makes sense. Right. So long as nobody at the company or who's visiting the company has the sign out password, then they can't exit the app.
Chris, we have a question back here.
Yes, please.
Will this suppress iOS and OS update alerts on the device? If that makes sense. Yeah.
I do hear you, yes. So best practice for this to work, turn auto updates off for your device, right? So you won't get that notification essentially. That is included in the ZDM best practices, and I'm working on getting something up on the support site that kind of explains this, but you'll want auto updates off for ZDM to function as expected.
I'm wondering if you guys are ever planning on adding a console view to Mac, Windows, or any of the peripherals.
Like a
That would-
preview?
No, being able to actually like a VNC or something into the devices that could solve a lot of the like peculiar use cases.
Okay.
So we've definitely discussed it. I don't know where it is on the roadmap, but actually, based on some of our screen sharing capabilities in the Zoom platform, we think we can actually do it relatively easily because we have already the ability to take control of somebody's screen, keyboard, mouse remotely. So it's come up in conversation. I don't think it made it into version 1, but it definitely, hopefully will be there sometime soon.
Okay. Keeping track of whose hand was up first. Appreciate the, thank you.
In this scenario, since you can't join a device to another MDM, how do you envision managing, especially on iPads, managing things like Wi-Fi credentials that you want to push out to your devices, especially when certificates expire and they need to be updated? Is that just manual touch right now?
Right. Well, you're going through that setup wizard, so yeah, you do have the option to enter in the Wi-Fi there. But that's another one of those things that we've heard a few times, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets added to a roadmap.
So,
Get a question here in the...
so in my organization, we use Kaseya, which
Sure.
was suggested by our support guys in Zoom. So is the intention of CDM replace tools like Kaseya and things like that?
So I think once we get the screen or the remote desktop capability with the keyboard and mouse control, I think you will probably be able to get rid of Kaseya. That's probably the one major feature for all the kind of other detailed things that you might need to do to be able to remote desktop in is super helpful. So I think once we have that, then should cover pretty much most of the use cases. It's probably, I don't know when the next release for this is, but I think probably Q1 would be of 2020. So the question was, would we prefer Kaseya not manage updates? I think it's really up to you guys to figure out what is the best, what works best for you. We're trying to solve, there's customers that don't have MDM and just want to do some basic management of the devices, upgrade the Zoom apps and have them auto log in and things like that. So that was the idea behind building ZDM, where we draw the line on how many features do we want to add versus saying, okay, if you want to have this level of management capability, maybe you do need a third-party MDM. That's kind of the balance that we're going to have to figure out. So help us figure that out and know what the top 5, 10 features are that we should really have, and that would suffice. So we started with, let's manage the OS, let's manage updates, let's make it easier to log in, launch Zoom, and then we'll kind of build out some features beyond that.
In regards to iOS.
Oh, hey. All right, go ahead.
Sorry, man.
It's the problem
in
with
regards-
2 mics, 3 mics now. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
In regards to iOS updates, whenever you go to update, you always have to go ahead and touch the iPad. I saw your options there, your option screen where you had all of them checked. Is there a way to uncheck all of them so we can just have a straight iOS update without having to touch every single iPad?
No. We cannot silently upgrade the iPad today. You'll still have to interact with the iPad, right? If we're talking about iOS upgrades, right? The ZRC upgrade is fully silent. iOS itself, when a new iOS is available, I believe Apple will want you to see what's new in that release, right? So maybe light mode and dark mode, or the new today view for an iPad. We're not bypassing that screen today. So you will need to have somebody interact with those new features. And then once you're past that screen, you'll get back to Zoom Rooms. I think we have time for one more question. Definitely
right.
got to be you.
Cool, thanks, man. It's actually kind of a callback to the certificate question from earlier. And I was wondering, because you mentioned during the initial setup that you could ignore a certificate, for example. Can you add one after the fact, after you've already enrolled the device and you're managing it with Zoom Device Management? Can you add another certificate?
I'm not sure if I'm following the question. I don't remember ignoring any certificates.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood what you said. Somebody
For assigning a device, that section there where I was like, you can do this before enrolling, let's say?
I think so. I think the question was if there was an updated certificate that needed to be added, or if there was I may have misunderstood.
Is there any more confusion on this?
So,
Maybe we can help. Yeah.
I guess what I'm asking is, can you build out the Zoom Device Management, enroll a room, and enroll the devices, and then after the fact add on to that? Can you add on certificates? Can you add on attributes? Can you turn things on, turn things off?
Sure, you can play with the feature set we have available after enrolling. As far as uploading an additional certificate, I'm not sure you would need to.
Okay.
Right, one certificate will apply for the account, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
So
if not,
somebody asked earlier about if it expired. If
it
a certificate
expires yearly,
expires,
so you'll need to renew
and then
yearly.
you need to renew it.
But it's for the account.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just going to apply to all the rooms that it's already on.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
If I didn't understand that question fully, I'm happy to try and get down to the bottom of it after this. Right, and we'll have automatic email notifications that will be sent, as well as alerts in your Zoom Rooms or Zoom ecosystem, Zoom web portal, so you are aware that that date is coming. Okay, you guys have been a great audience. Appreciate the questions. Hope this was helpful. Thank you.